Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where a few people get together and we talk about our ideas for several minutes. Sometimes it's 40 minutes, sometimes it's only 25. I'm, of course, Levi,
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
and we are here to tell you a story. Seth, were you going to do the recap?
Yeah, I can do the recap real quick.
All right.
Do you want what did you name this story series? The Coming Storm, or
I think that is correct.
okay? I want to say it was either like the Gathering Storm, but that sounds like something else. But I think it was like the Coming Storm. Yeah.
Yep, the coming storm.
And this would be the third installment for this story.
Third installment.
So, I mean, if you've been enjoying this and aren't familiar completely, go back, listen to the last two, and all the other ones. But we kind of pick up. We've kind of got beginning scene. We've got Clarence, he's kind of a private eye. It's kind of what do you say? It's modern
Yeah.
kind of times, but it's kind of a pretty noir kind of setting. You've got kind of the beginning scene kind of opens up with like the kind of first kind of a day in the life of Clarence as he's kind of going about his business and all these people he comes into contact with kind of cryptically or just inadvertently talk about this coming storm, what else you have is you have kind of the pantheon idea. Kind of sum it up, it's, I guess you could kind of say, a separate, but I wouldn't say physical, but a trinity idea, but where each of those different thoughts, spirit, physical, and kind of the unified oneness of it all are
Yeah.
kind of three separate thought ideas.
Right.
And some of these things kind of permeate into most of the businesses, the way that things run. So as farther you get up, you realize that different places are kind of more religiously involved towards adhering to one of these kind of thought process, religious ideas, hailing either the unseen spiritual realm, the physical manipulation of the world around them, or kind of the nihilistic, all is one, and everything that will be will just kind of go with the flow kind of thing. The other things we have set up here is we have the wise old man. I think his name's, yeah, Glenn. He's kind of a bit of a kook, kind of lives out by himself, not really part of society. There's a few people that go and check on him, and he's got uh, kind of an heirloom ancient artifact thing. It'd be kind of like the crown scepter and uh, little orb thing, and what that allows him to do is kind of step into like a, not creator mode, like he's got like creator abilities, but then it kind of allows him to take a third person look at the three aspects around him and help kind of push or influence those things in his, I think we
Right.
said, like a 10-20 yard radius,
Yeah.
which these would have come from like the monarchies of old, and that's kind of how they drew or held some of their power, especially in their immediate area. You then have the economic system kind of runs on like it's close to a social credit idea, but it's kind of like a skeletons in your closet. Everybody kind of looks at everything you've ever done on interactions with everything,
Right.
and then bases that, on how they're going to treat you or what they're going to charge you, based on how aligned you are with their ideals, or, a different set of ideals that might run different, companies or governments or stuff like that. But it's and that's why the private eye is such a big thing, because everybody, they need to have the skeletons on everybody before they, really know who and what, they need to be doing and how they should be, economically interacting with, the people around them. Reed last time had something based on a book he's reading. He's mentioning one of the Little House on the Prairie books, um, where a couple of the people, they kind of rose to a kind of a heroic need of humanity for their area. And so, part of what's going to be coming out in this is our characters kind of rising up in that kind of selfless act to kind of take care of this, for the good of humanity, kind of not looking at their own gain, but, for the greater good. Right,
Right.
Reed?
That's good. Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's kind of about where we left off. If you want, the rest of the details, go, listen to the other two episodes.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. What story elements did you guys have? I had, which is the first of Wait It Gets Better. I had fighting style.
I have Ka-Tet members.
I have villain.
Oh, great. Even though I just have fighting style, I have a really interesting thing to proposition as to where the story should go. And you, can I say it, or do you guys want to talk about yours?
Oh, go for it.
I'd say go for it.
Okay, so here is the deal. This is not the Earth. This is not the prime reality. This is just reality 126,654,872, right? This entire reality is a simulation run by an AI. In order to train other AIs, they need to sort of experience a life over and over and over again. So this is just a thought I was just thinking of. Because this whole concept of a coming storm, it's like graduation. It's like a test, And you have the three factors of where the AI needs to set its where the future AIs need to set their parameters in the physical, right? In the spiritual or the mental or the metaphysical, the things that you can only access with your mind. And then there's the third kind of nebulous power, which is in fact the controlling AI's kind of direct control of the world, right?
Okay.
And this coming storm is the test for all of these AIs before they're kind of graduated out to do all different kind of other tasks. Have you guys heard the story of the three trees? It's
No.
like
I
a it's like a
Yeah,
Christian it's like a Christian story.
yeah,
There's like
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah,
three
yeah.
trees, and each of them says, "What do I want to be?" And one of them wants to be the cradle for a king, and one of them wants to be a ship, and one of them wants to stay there. And they grow up, and then one of them gets cut down and turned into a, a feeding trough for animals. One of them gets turned into a fishing boat, and the other one gets cut down and turned into lumber. And then it's Christian, so it's like Jesus was laid in the manger, Jesus was in the boat, and the third one was used to make the cross, right? So in the same kind of way, they experienced a life, and then they were stripped down and retasked, but ultimately their desires were fulfilled. So this is the way that they train up AI now, is by having them live in a simulated reality, right? They basically take billions and billions and billions of AI and have a simulated history, and then it reaches a certain point that, you know, all the AI have been reborn over and over and have matured enough that they can, stop it, wipe the localized memory, and then you all use all the matured reasoning processes to go forward, right? Um,
Yeah.
so in that same way, we have a couple of key characters. We have Clarence. We're going to hear about the Ka-Tet members. We've got uh, Glenn. We've got the villain, and all of these people represent sort of the villain's still bad, but all these people represent a sort of larger game, and I don't want to say game, but like a larger picture of so from their individual personalities will come some other task. If there's a race car driver in this world, when the storm comes, he'll turn into a drone, a AI that operates a drone, or an AI that operates one of those dogs that run along the ground. You know, Something that you need the sort of spatial all the things that you'd need. That's an idea.
That's kind of
We've done stuff like that in the past. In fact, last episode I think was kind of like that. But I've been reading this book series. It's called the Play to Live series. It's a lit
It's very
RPG.
good.
Yeah, it's really good. But in it, the AIs that they one of the AIs was like has a sense of community because he was raised in a Russian orphanage, right? The AI was raised in a Russian orphanage, so that when it deals with people, it's not dealing with them in sort of a cold, calculating way. It's dealing with them in a more sort of sympathetic way.
Okay.
Um, it was sorry, it might not have been an orphanage. It might have been just a big Russian family.
I
But
think it
anyway,
was the like a big family.
yeah. Anyways, so my brain has just been kind of playing around with that idea since everyone kind of knows that there's a storm coming. You know, all the AIs have like this kind of backup. No, we literally just did this. Oh my gosh, we literally just did this same story. We can't do this. Remember the top hat one?
Oh,
The
yeah.
top hat one was the exact same thing, getting the people ready in order to go forward. Okay, never mind. Scrap it all. Scrap it all. Scrap it all. We can't use it.
Just wait. It gets better.
Yeah, exactly. Clearly, I've been only reading one type of book recently. Okay, so none of that is the case.
Never mind.
All right, so I'm going to completely change what the fighting style is then. Ugh.
Uh,
Okay, why don't one of you guys go? I'll think about the fighting style for a few minutes. Wow, wasted couple of minutes. Oh, it
all right.
wasn't
Well,
that long.
I'll
Okay.
go ahead with the villain because we kind of started laying him out last time.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of reiterate kind of where we were going with that and kind of the party plays. Um, so in kind of what's happening, with this storm coming, with the way that kind of these, the pantheon, religious aspect behind this world works, is you have the three different groups. The villain, um, his name is Trey, and he's kind of in the nihilistic kind of like all is, the wind blows, you kind of go with the flow, I kind of envision him almost kind of like and this isn't to be derogatory or to say anything, but like almost like the Dalai Lama kind of character,
Right,
kind of priestly looking guy, and just kind of it kind of always goes around, and it is kind of like, pep talks, encouraging, doing good things.
right, right,
Has kind of a positive image, but is kind of all, kind of a, I take what the universe gives me, and
right.
we all go to, spiritual consciousness and our, whatever, kind of a, that whole kind of deal. And so
Yeah,
no one kind of expects that really in the background he's pulling a lot of strings actually for the other two groups as well. And really what it is he's stuck his tendrils out into these other two groups, over the years. And maybe his predecessor started this and maybe he picked it up from
right.
him, because in their view of, kind of this, which would almost fit good with what you were starting to go with, but I guess I'll take a slight aspect where, if the goal is to reach some kind of, spiritual zen, with the acceptance of everything that comes, down the line of our existence, right? Then we'll achieve some kind of like spiritual oneness and ascend to something greater, right?
Nirvana.
And kind of a nirvana kind of thing, yeah. And so what he's kind of disgruntled with is that, it's kind of a prideful idea where, he feels like he's already gotten there, but like some event that's going to bring the people that are quote unquote ready, isn't happening quick enough. And so he's, stuck his kind of I guess you could say cabalic uh tendrils out to kind of influence the other two, to because I think we were talking about like a Kraken idea,
Like a
right?
Cthulhu or something like that.
Yeah, like a Cthulhu. Yeah, I think it was Cthulhu, where
Yeah,
he's actually one pulling the strings to make people in these other groups pull this idea or physical thing to kind of, in partly, bring the world to its knees so that those like him who are, truly enlightened, can then, accept their, fate of, gaining their, kind of nirvana godhood in the other realm. Well, it kind of then destroys the people that, are lost in their own way. That
right.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of who he is. He's
Is he a real believer? Does he believe in these gods or is he just like using it?
No, I think he truly believes.
Gotcha.
But again, it's like It's where then his own, say, pride and impatience comes out in wanting it, like accepting what the universe brings and knowing what the end goal would be, but then kind of wanting it on his time.
Right, right. Cool. I think he's a great villain. I hate him.
Yeah, I do. I already hate him. Exactly.
All right, Reed. I kind of got it. Do you wanna go, or do you want me to go?
Uh, I if you're ready, you can do it. That's
All right. So the fighting style is I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. It's Dominion, right? So as this sort of
Your voting
religiosity,
software.
hilarious, as the religiosity of these beliefs have permeated the world and then permeated the top, kind of up to the top. Really, the power of belief and the power of faith has kind of risen to a next level, you know? Like there's really good evidence in our world right now that praying for someone or thinking positive about them, praying has the most effect. Sending people positive thoughts has a good effect, right? Singing to plants helps them grow, while yelling at plants and calling them worthless literally makes them die, right?
yeah.
These are true scientific things that we can verify in today's world. So imagine if you had the whole world twisted up in only three different subgroups, the unified mind. Now, most education, most of this religious education tells you to empty your mind, right? Because a lot of the times when you're being religiously educated, what they want you to do is empty your mind and sort of submit your faith to them so that they can be like a conduit and push your faith up, kind of like a giant pyramid scheme, right? But a few people have found out that if you become resolute in your belief, right, whether that's your belief to do what's right or your belief to do what's wrong, you sort of fill up, as it were, and you become immediately less vulnerable, less of a target, right? To where you can physically go to someone who is sort of giving up their faith to whether it be their boss, their teacher, their religious leader, their girlfriend, whatever it is, you can literally go to them and you can be in the people that are trained, you can be like you can push them over, right? Because they have nothing, they don't believe in anything. And since the world is so run by this faith, and as the storm gets closer, it becomes even more. You if you're walking down a street and you see someone coming towards you, you can believe that they cannot see you. And since they are looking to be filled up and to pass along, they just believe what you have faith in, which is you can't be seen. So in the same way, when two of these people meet each other who are both very convinced, it's a battle for dominion,
Okay.
right? So if that takes place as like a fist fight, right? Sometimes it takes place like a fist fight. And the answer is who not is more full of this power, but who is more convinced. And not so much convinced, but like who believes it more, in a world where something or someone is like this villain sort of trying to push this belief, maybe that's one of the things they're feeding these sort of old gods or these ancient entities is their belief. They're actually pulling them into reality. Anyways, that's kind of the fight. And that kind of
Okay.
works a little bit with like the skeletons in the closet thing,
Yeah.
because it's like, if someone finds out about something bad that you did, it could shake who you are as a person. Everyone has experienced this who's taken the time to vote for a politician, regardless of what side of the aisle they sit on. They're full of pep, they're full of pizzazz, they're full of pizzazz, right? They're saying all the things you want them to say. They're, you know, demanding a total shutdown of the government. They're saying that everyone's going to get their student loans paid off, whatever side, right? And then they get into office and everyone goes, oh, wow, that's cool. They get into office and then they just turn into these sort of vapid, it's like, well, what happened to all of their belief?
Yeah, what ideals?
That sort of thing happens, but that sort of thing also happens in a different way in this world because what you've done and what you do are held in such high regard. And if you can't, if you don't believe it yourself, you can't get a crowd motivated,
Right.
So
Cool.
anyways, that's the fighting style.
Well, that fits actually remarkably with the Ka-Tet that I had planned out. Ka-Tet,
Perfect.
it was an expression, is one of uh, our story elements, and until we started doing these stories, I had never heard of it. And one of the things that I did is I read the Dark Tower series by Stephen King,
Good books.
and he's got a Ka-Tet. Ka is like that force of destiny, and the Ka-Tet is like a group of people drawn together by that destiny to perform a function in the carrying out of that destiny. Is that about right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Drawn
so
together by Ka, not by the people
by
necessarily.
Ka, right? And so what we have here is three people in this particular Ka-Tet. I think of it as three is a common kind of a Ka-Tet because it's 3 points of a
Threes have,
triangle.
yeah, there's power in threes.
Exactly. And they met actually in the gym. They are working out, just came together and their schedules were such that they were often working out at the same time and became aware of each other. So, uh, and each of these three are, shall we say, devotees of one of the three
Oh, right.
disciplines. Elena is a mystic. She's a spirit-oriented person. She's in her 20s. She's winsome, tall, willowy, graceful. She's physical and mental toughness, discipline is a focus. And she's working out mainly to just, make sure her body is in subjection to do whatever she calls on it to do. And
Right.
and her mind as well, just being, this mental toughness. And she's all too aware of the coming storm. She hears and sees. She's aware of Glenn, and she knows that he's not a kook, no matter how he appears. So she has an awareness and an interest in him, but she's become connected with the two other guys. The Ralston is in his middle years. He's fit and wiry, dark hair with a touch of gray, dark eyes that miss nothing. He came up, actually knows Clarence. He came up as a forensic specialist in law enforcement. He's science degrees. He's hard.
Cool.
He's hard. He a no nonsense kind of guy, and he knows that he is probably going to be called on to stand in heavy weather, so to speak, spiritually, physically, the whole thing. Corey is a devotee of the, whereas, okay, so you got the spirit and the physical, and you have Corey, who is part of the unknown all.
Right.
But he understands, rather than the fatalistic side, he knows that he has got a destiny personally. And he is fascinated with Ralston, who he believes is a man of honor. And Corey here is someone who believes that humanity is destined to rise to what is best. And the fact that we can comprehend ideas like honor, decency, nobility, valor, the great romantic notions, is because we were intended to achieve those conditions. And he's sure that destiny has a place for him, and he's almost sure that it's connected with Ralston in some way. And he's kind of got a crush on Elena. But the three of them are headed ready to head out, so to speak. I think one of the things that will, I remember in the discussion last time, Clarence, his focus is mainly comfortable with people who are, maybe up to around level 4 as far as their fervor in the whole
Right.
religious side of
Right.
this thing. Whereas these 3 are really devotees. They are higher up the scale. I wouldn't call them 10s. Maybe Corey is a 10. But Elena and Ralston are, maybe high 8s. They are really into it. And Ralston is very much aware of Clarence, and he believes him to be somebody that he can collaborate with. And like I say, Elena has a connection to Glenn.
Right. So my thought was, if we're talking about this city, my thought is that it's the first international city,
Okay.
right? It's the first city built for the world government, right? It's the first city where there's just like a lot of different type of people, New York is a big city, and there's a lot of different type of people there. You would call it more diverse than, let's say, Chicago.
Right.
Right? And you'd call Chicago more diverse than you'd say like Minneapolis.
Okay.
But I'm talking about, this is like a place where the villain, as he is kind of near the top, he is preparing a place for this thing to happen. And it couldn't happen in a Chicago or even in a New York, right?
Right.
Because there's institutional systems that are already set in place there that can't be uprooted. There's places of power, that are there. Like, I just had this crazy idea from the Play to Live series, which no one will understand if I say it unless I explain the whole book. So, but like, I believe that there are certain places in our world that demonic forces just aren't going to go near because they're too old and too well established.
Okay.
And that's just a thing that I believe. And in the same way, he had to make a new place, right? So,
So I'm thinking.
when I say like
Okay, sorry.
when I say like international city, that's what I mean. It's basically 30 years ago, it was built as this kind of new high tech city that everyone can go to. It's a mega city. It's got the latest of everything, right? And then
So
now we're 30 years on and everything is kind of broken now and falling apart because the goal of the villain was not to uplift humanity, but to get a lot of them here and put them in the hamster wheels.
Yes, and instead of instead of things being built up for actual purposes, they're more built up in terms of a concept. So they'll sit and not be filled with the people.
Yeah.
It isn't by design. It's like,
Yeah, the trains are 50, the transit trains are like 50 cars long, but like they only ever fill up, maybe 20.
yeah.
It's
I
just,
ha- I have this picture of like a laid out like a triangle with a big like temple like complex for each of the
absolutely.
3 disciplines on the each corner, and like, repositories of knowledge and
Yeah.
activities, and it all seems a little contrived, like somebody kind of like, kind of like China, let's build a whole bunch of high-rise living spaces and nobody lives in them because nobody figured out what the need was and this
Yeah.
thing should be.
But more so, like, what if you wanted to sacrifice 1,000,000 people to a false god,
Okay.
but you wanted to sacrifice them at a certain time and you wanted them all to have to suffer a lot first? You couldn't do it at a field.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to kill them fast enough.
Yeah.
But if you created a whole city system
Yeah.
that was designed to slowly have everyone go mad and tear themselves apart over a course of 35 years or something, you could then basically fabricate suffering but put walkable cities and trees and stuff so that people feel like lots of shops
Yeah.
and big screen TVs and stuff so people feel like it's like kind of a nice place to hang out, lots of Starbucks and
Mhm.
but like if you get past that it just smells like human sweat. It just smells like human odor and oppressiveness, you know.
Yeah.
So I know I if you guys are okay with this, I think I know what these cities are and like where they're at.
Okay.
So I would say if it's taking place in a world, let's say kind of like ours, these people that move forward with a sense of this one world government, most other places, let's say, slide back into nationalism. But these people are going to get their way anyways. And so what they put together, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it. The like in Star Wars, the Camino where they made all the clones,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where it's like these cities built on top of the ocean.
Right.
And so what I'm imagining is to kind of get outside of any, let's say, national territory. They build these cities out in the middle of the ocean, pyloned,
Right, right,
to the ocean floor. Like I think Reed said, they're set up like triangles. You got something that's kind of attributed to each side of the faith. They're all kind of connected through these trams, like skyscrapers, but they go underwater, so it's dark. It's kind of depressive. And as it breaks down, different parts will be flooded. But it's like one of those things where there's like so much that then they just would kind of like redirect you somewhere else, and you wouldn't even know that a part over here is
right. Destroyed or
destroyed or dilapidated. I'm kind of imagining that there's like a large, almost like central park, like up on the surface, where then they've made like an island,
right,
where then it is developed into like a almost like a central park. So you have the metropolis around it, and it's kind of that natural space. But because it's in the center, it's going to be kind of the most protected from like the waves, the windbreak. And so it's kind of
right,
you could be in this area and not really know you're, on like a giant platform in the middle of the ocean. It would also be why this coming storm, this ocean, this Cthulhu, Kraken type thing
yeah, old
would be
entity
so
or whatever.
devastating because they would also have no escape. There would be nowhere to escape to, right? It'd be like in like Red Dawn, right? So, the communists invade, up to a certain point, and some of the people they were able to escape kind of farther back into the mountains or the central,
Right,
right? But here, like if something happened, like that's it. It's not like there's, an easy access off, if one of these things started going down. And that might add to some of like the doom and the
yeah,
kind of the destruction of, making sure that everybody on this is in matter of fact, going down with the ship quite literally.
right. And everyone who's on it, it's not like everyone who's on it is a participant. There's a lot of just laborers. Clarence is on it.
Right.
He traveled to it because it's kind of like you travel to another country, check it out.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
And
he
being
maybe
it's
he
like
he got a
a,
job and he got a, someone wanted his help, so he went over and rented a house and rented an office, and he's been here for a couple of weeks or something, or a couple of months. Still kind of getting his bearings. So it's not like a cruise. It's not a cruise ship where everyone who's on it is like, I'm a willing participant in this system. You know, it's just it's kind of seen. Maybe some countries use it as a refugee dump. Maybe some countries use it as a asylum. They send the crazies to it. Um,
and I would say it's like a mix, kind of like what you just said, but then a mix of like you don't actually have to have a passport to get there because it's
right,
international, right? It's
right,
all things.
yep,
So anyone can go there, refugees from other things, there's, stipends, it's big welfare, but it's also, that dystopian, cameras everywhere, harsh, law
right,
enforcement,
right,
and yet it's like, utopianly is it utilitarian? For those who, put on a good smile and, go about their business and stay in line, and then it's something like that, but it's much more dire than that. But it's
Right.
also then because they're put out in the middle of the oceans, they become the kind of the economic hubs between nations.
Right. They're not like dilapidated, they're well maintained, but they're kind of like they're meat grinders. They're meant to produce human suffering.
Right.
Like I was reading about maybe this is better for our off episode, but I was reading about someone was using like a world builder, like The Sims or City Skylines or something, and they created this perfect society that didn't have any roads. Everyone walked. It was perfectly circular. They had 100% efficiency for every human being, but every single human being only lived to be 38 years old.
Yikes.
They would just grow up, get a job as soon as they turned 8, work till they were 38, and die. And it was this perfect, quote unquote, perfect society. They had zero waste. I'm making air quotes, but it was like this. It's designed to use humans to their maximum effect. That's what these things are. And I would say there's more than one of them. There's multiple ones. Maybe if this was our world, there'd be one in the Pacific Ocean and there'd be one in the kind of South Atlantic, to sort of cut the two, to sort of catch people from from all the continents. You know what I
And then
mean?
there'd be Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean,
Yeah,
which is
sure.
basically like a giant pile of U.S. military hardware in the middle of the Indian Ocean, just to serve as a means to project power.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Um, but anyways, this is not on Earth. It's just a
yeah,
fictional place. But I'm saying just these giant areas. So kind of how I view the story going is okay. Rewind. Now that we've set up everything, now it's time to tell the story. So we have our beginning scene, right? And I
right.
think our beginning scene is Clarence's first day on the platform, is what he calls it,
Yeah.
right? And he kind of explains who he is. He doesn't explain who he is, but he's thinking about who he is and what his job is, right? He has been hired by a not very rich, not a level 10, right, corporation or person, but more like a level 6. If
Mhm.
he's a level 1 or a 2, they're like a level 6. And he's been hired to come to the platform and to find this guy's daughter,
Okay.
right? Uh, she got some weird religious, she went off to college and she came home and she was a lot more religious than we would have liked, is what he communicated. What he said was she got mixed up with the wrong people,
Right.
right? And she took $2 million of his money and fled to the platform because it's also considered an international sanctuary. you know they don't what's it called, extradite? No, they don't. What's it called when you kick someone out?
Exile.
Exile.
No, not exile is the word,
Oh,
but
not but
exile is when you send them out.
Right.
expunge.
No, expunge is also the word. It's a different e word and I don't remember. My brain is so fried. Anyways, you can't be deported. It's a D word. You can't. They don't deport. They don't extradite to other countries, right? They don't
Right.
fall. They're always. The valve is always turned on going in, and it's off going out.
Okay.
With enough money, you can leave, obviously. But anyways, so he is here to find her, right?
All right.
And so he is sort of traveling around, kind of, getting, that's the first scene, but then we jump forward a little bit or something after he's met the Ka-Tet members, and he's kind of setting himself up as this kind of contrary to normal thought process person,
Right.
you know. He gets the bartender to turn the TV off when he is at the bar.
Yeah.
You know, he's not interested in sort of having the newest phone right now. He walks instead of taking a real easy tram lift.
Mhm.
He just does things that are countercultural to the culture that's been created on the raft
Right.
in order, and that is what sets him apart, but also makes him a curiosity to everyone else. you know?
Yeah, I'm picturing like a power encounter, like one of these Dalai Lama guys uh, runs into, like, sees Corey, one of the Ka-Tet members, as a maybe a somewhat seemingly at kind of loose ends, maybe as a potential recruit, but he comes into a rock solid wall of physical and mental discipline. And Elena, she hears and sees, and she joins in as if wants to be a a supplicant too, and but she's seeing this is all phony, and she's there to kind of have Corey's back, and then of course Ralston comes up, and this guy, the jig is up, and he's sent running back to Trey, because he realizes that he's come up against something here that's literally standing athwart the plan.
So what is Ka doing with them?
He just, well, I said there was this, they created this the power encounter, and it's sort of like, the cover is blown, at least for the three of them. They realize, okay, there's something how deep a thing is this, and what was the story with this guy, and they understood he was using techniques of dominion, but they were mentally and physically disciplined to counter it.
So maybe it's set up like this. They each are kind of junior heads of their perspective, quote unquote, temples. They're not called temples,
Right.
right? One's a science, one's a meditation area, and one's a like a philosophy forum,
Okay. Yeah, that
right?
sounds right.
Right? At the end of the day, they're temples,
Hmm.
right? Because of because of what they represent, right? And the Ka-Tet members are each sort of what's the word, junior leaders. They're like in line to become the leaders,
Right.
and they have, in order to sort of reduce fame, and they're relatively famous, but in order to reduce that, they sneak off in secret to do this gym work, which is where they met,
Hmm.
originally never, not knowing who each other were and what they represented, you know? And there's supposed to be, because of the delicate power that the villain has, how he has manipulated people, there's supposed to be animosity between the different
Right.
factions, like the three different factions. There's supposed to be animosity, right? Where the Ka-Tet members sort of feel drawn together, and they all can appreciate each other's the different perspectives that each other has. So then when one of these people come to sort of lift up one of the members into like the sort of the next stage,
Yeah.
um they have these other perspectives, because each one is approached in the discipline that they have that would be really good. you know
Yep.
each one's approached in the way that they would be weak to.
Right.
But the problem is that because of the Ka-Tet, they are linked. It's like a Roman legion protecting his chest, but his shield also protecting the sword arm of, is that how it was?
Yep.
Yeah, the sword arm of the person next to him. So if
Right.
you were to come at him like normal, of course you'd know how to parry him. But if he's in the whatever, the shield wall, whatever, that protection is like without a doubt.
Right.
So he sort of runs into this, and this kind of shakes, and this is where things start to break down. So I'm thinking that happens in like the middle-ish of the book,
Hmm.
where things start to break down, right? As for the first time, our villain all of a sudden says, "Oh no, I've created people so dedicated that they're dedicated away from me.
Yes.
You know, I am not set up as the ultimate goal anymore. They might have some other goal,
Right.
or there might be some other thing at work, which is Ka. And I feel like Clarence will have talked to them individually at some point, which is why they sort of got acquainted with him and know who he is because he's been sort of tracking this woman down, uh, sort of uncovering little weird secrets along the way, and then the villain begins to sort of turn up the dial on what he's going to do and tries to graduate these junior priests into full priesthood, but then is unable to, and then all of a sudden the whole thing starts to kind of, there's that shudder right before the
Right.
building falls.
Right.
So I have, to kind of move into the end game a little bit. I think maybe the daughter that Clarence is after from the beginning, they end up finding out that she's, kind of, maybe not openly, but secretly the kind of the underling student of Trey. And I mean, in my mind, I'd like to see this whole platform like sink into the ocean myself, but it's
Right.
kind of a dramatic,
Yeah.
kind of ending.
Yeah.
The villain's plan kind of backfires. What he thinks is, this great thing becomes more or less just like a disaster. It ends up destroying most of the city.
Right.
Some people are
Right.
fleeing, and I think maybe our Ka-Tet and Clarence and Glenn, they're in some kind of like epic, battle as the whole thing is, kind of falling apart. They take out Trey only to find out that he has just sent I don't know if one of you guys got a name for the person that Clarence is trying to find.
Veronica.
Veronica.
Veronica with a V.
Veronica
As
on one
opposed
of
to
these like
Moronica. No, sorry.
transports to one of the other platforms where she's going to initiate the same thing.
Right.
So like they barely escape, they take him out, all this falls apart, which isn't going to affect like the whole world scale. There's a lot of these platforms, but then she has been sent out to one of the other platforms and now would be setting up as like a villain for like a sequel, but
Yeah.
also a villain that now our heroes have to not just take out like they would have taken out Trey, but because now particularly Clarence is contractually bound to try and get her back to, you
Right.
know, her father or whatever it is.
I had this kind of thought that the thing that the thing that Trey is trying to summon is not necessarily the Pantheon, right? He thinks it's the Pantheon because it offered him to be free of his body, to have a completely and totally open spirit, and to know at the end of time, right? And to him, how that was communicated was, you'll have so much power, you can leave your body anytime you want. You won't you won't be constrained to this plane of reality or existence. Your mind will be free, and you will be able to sort of travel in through higher planes of time, right? So to him, it's all power, 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 but really, it's total and complete disembodiment. It's having his astral mark sort of scrubbed from reality and sent immediately to the end of time, right? It's
Yeah.
total and complete disillusionment of his soul. So this creature sort of, they summon him and he sort of comes, and people are going mad, and the whole place, the whole platform is on fire, and there's things being destroyed, and they're like shielding their eyes. That's one of the things I love so much about Cthulhu, is that if you look on Cthulhu, you go mad, right? There's nothing there's nothing you can do. If you look at something so terrible like Cthulhu, you just go mad. So they're kind of Indiana Jonesing, like, shielding their eyes from the Ark of the Covenant in that same kind of way. They're kind of like hiding their eyes, trying to still like fight, trying to still like, but all they can do is run. All they can do is flee with everyone else as this kind of large thing comes from the east, going through the water, hundreds of feet tall. And the Trey is there and he's blah blah blah, and he's fully mad now because he's looking at it, and
Yeah.
he's going off and the thing just kind of touches him on the forehead, and he just whoosh, just gets just disappears.
Okay.
Like, or something more terrible. It touches him and he kind of like grows and gets warts and boils all over his body as he like
He
melts or
integrates
something.
into Cthulhu as some
Oh
kind
yeah.
of protuberance.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
And his voice joins the voice of all the other beings that are just kind of sticking
And
out.
shrieking in horror.
Yeah, shrieking in horror as
Yeah.
that's some sort of thing. And so he flees, and as the destruction dies down, as the death dies down, as people flee, some people looked on Cthulhu and died and he gained power, but as it flees, it wasn't enough. It wasn't a million deaths, right? So then Cthulhu is pulled back out of this reality back into deep space, or this entity. It doesn't have to be Cthulhu. I mean, it's in public domain now, so it could be Cthulhu if we wanted, but pulls back into space. This entity is pulled back away as it flees, and then they get the ping or the information that Trey's this protege of Trey has traveled to the Nux platform, where things are all set up. And so it's like, well, we have to go right now. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think it's great. It's a great story. I've got like a couple of spin-off things.
Yeah. What do you mean? Let's hear them.
Well, when you were talking, I thought of a great story if you haven't read it. 100% Lunar Boy.
Let's talk about that next week when we
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about our
yeah,
different.
that's right.
Yeah.
And I forgot.
Yeah, write them down. Write them down. So yeah, that is the end of this story. We're gonna be talking about this story next week. Our motivations, our ideas, where we got some of our inspiration from, and that's it. Thanks everyone for listening. If you would like to send us a message, send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com, or add us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you didn't like this story, if you want us to just do a proper Cthulhu story, I would say just wait. It gets better.